251 6111. 858-251-6111, or you may come online at godradio1.com. And so I'm here this evening with Dr. Leonard Thompson, our partner in this effort, and I just want to yield to him and to say hello, and then we're going to get into talking about a number of interesting topics.
Well, Dr. Warren, first of all, thank you so much for being here on this evening. I know that with the busy schedule and the news and all the things that are happening around the nation, it's so important that we get together and share information with our community. I just kind of want to go back to last weekend. Lots of things have been happening over the last 2 week period that I'm excited because it seems like you all didn't miss a heartbeat. Every event that took place, you seem to have representation, and it says something about when you have all the national things happening that you're still able to carry the local things that are important to people.
Well, we've been very fortunate. Last week, we did have a lot of things happening. It was that weekend before back to school. There were all kinds of backpacks. There was the birthday party that Miss Kathleen Harmon had her 91st birthday in the Marie Whitman Park community event. There was an event at ECC. There was an event at George Stevens Center, the fundraiser for Preacher Man. And then there was a county effort out here in Kearney Mesa with all kind of vendors and activities. And we covered all of the things that took place last week. And the paper that comes out in the morning is a 24-page issue that has all of this stuff in it. So, you know, it's one thing for people to put things on social media and for you to have a flash for a moment, but we find that people still want to have that hard copy that they can save and open and look at and see. And so we're excited that we've expanded in terms of staff to cover these events. At the same time, we have our online coverage of other efforts. We have international writers in places like Mexico and London and Africa, and then we have people across the country in different cities. We're on the Associated Press news feed like CNN, as well as not only having that, but we also have the news outlet that comes from NMPA, our own web scenario, and we have the app that you can pull us up on. So we are just striking new territory in terms of availability to people.
Well, I'm just going to jump right into it and start off by poor Liz. Poor Liz Cheney. She was on the side of right. She voted to impeach the past former president, and then she is leading the charge with the
January 6th committee.
And yesterday they done voted her out of office.
Well, you know what? I would say that I wouldn't say poll is. I think it's very significant what happened. You know, as one man said, and he was voting Republican, Wyoming is 70% Republican. And so it was a primary. And so those that were independent and Democrats that wanted to vote for Liz, they had to change their party affiliation to Republican to be able to do so. Mm-hmm. And one man was reportedly crying as he voted because as a Republican, he was voting for the other person. And he was saying that's the first time that he hasn't voted for a Cheney. You know, our former vice president comes from there. The last election, she had over 70% of the vote. But the important thing is, as she said, you know, as a lawyer and as an office holder who took an oath, she sees all that more important than buying the big lie about Donald Trump just to stay in office. Mm-hmm. And so she's to be commended. She's not going to go away, as she said. We don't know what she's going to do, but she's still going to be a voice. She's a voice on that committee until her replacement is sworn in. Mm-hmm. And so I think that we need to take a lesson from what happened last week.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, Dr. Warren, if I was Miss Cheney, I'll be sitting up there like a cat that got the Tweety bird in my mouth with a feather popping out, saying, when I open my mouth, you're going to see this bird, and I'm going to let you know everything. I believe that she holds the keys to a lot of the vaults. That if she does talk freely, it could be the end of all the nonsense of the Orange Man.
Well, I think that it's very important where she sits and what she's doing. She says she's committed that he not go anywhere near the Oval Office again. And I'm very concerned as I write this week in terms of my editorial about our weapon and America's racism because it's not as much about Donald Trump as it is that he represents an element that the racist conservative white element can rally around because there's too many black and brown and yellow people voting, too many coming into the country. They feel like their way of life, quote unquote, is threatened. And so we see the response being one of violence. And if you want to see the racism, if the people who attacked the Capitol on January 6th had been black, 90% of them would have been dead because they would have shot them on the spot and killed them
Yeah.
in terms of what happened. And so here we have this situation now where Trump's people are winning primaries for governor, for secretary of state. They're going to be in a position to influence. They say they're going to change and decertify election returns. And I'm saying to black people in particular that there are enough of us in this country, if we get off our behinds and get serious and vote, that there are enough of us to influence and make sure that what they have in mind doesn't take place. But so far, it looks like we're not voting, we're not registering, we laid back, we're kicking it, and they're counting on that being the case 90 days from now when we have the November 8th election.
Well, what's surprising to me, and I don't know if you're seeing this, but I'm starting to see a lot of young African American, especially males, supporting Trump, and they're like financially. Things were better when Trump was in office, and this was happening. And I had to explain, because I was at the Black Man's Country Club called the Barbershop, and I had to say, you guys do understand that Trump benefit everything you saw during the Trump era was what Obama set up, and now you're in the Biden era, and the Biden has to deal with the stuff that Trump set up. So it takes almost 4 years to clear house before you can really see if you are actually, what you put in place is actually doing anything.
Well, I understand why some of them are going that way. One of the things Trump did was he passed this law, put forth this law that changed the sentencing for a number of young black men. And I have a nephew who is among this group that if they went to jail under 21, they are reconsidering their cases and they're looking at letting them out for time served. My nephew went to jail because he was present when a person who committed a murder discussed the murder, and they said that because he heard it and didn't say anything, they linked him as an accomplice and gave him 80 years.
Wow.
And so he is now 41. He has served 20. And thanks to the Innocence Project, he's going to be coming home soon.
Okay.
And that's because of what Trump did in terms of the change. But one change on the part of Trump is not enough for us to throw out everything that we have because this is a dangerous person. The real salvation for us will probably come if we can get a conviction of any kind against him between now and 2024. That will make a difference. If we can get an indictment, it probably will make a difference. But a conviction would certainly make the difference.
And one of the things about it is that, it's amazing to me how many people will lie to keep the lie.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Giuliani, literally has thrown away his whole entire career behind trying to keep the lie.
And it's kind of hard when you watch educated people who stand there and with a sincerity confess the lie that they know is not truth. It's cost him his law practice, his license. He's been disbarred. I think Sidney Powell, if she hasn't been, she will be. And you've got all of these White House counsel that have been brought before the grand jury. But the most significant thing this week is that, we now know that Trump is a target. And that means that from a grand jury standpoint, there's an effort being sought for a federal indictment, especially with him violating the Espionage Act. He's already under grand jury investigation in Georgia, and he has several grand jury issues going in New York. He took the Fifth Amendment more than 400 times in 3 hours of testimony in New York before the grand jury.
Mm-hmm.
And people know that the moment he stops taking the Fifth Amendment, whatever he says out of his mouth is going to be the kind of lie that's going to get him into perjury. And so, yeah, what's more disturbing than that is the reaction of that white element to the Justice Department uh, going into Mar-a-Lago and taking these documents that should not have been there in the first place. And everybody that's close to him making the observation that if something has value, Trump will sell it. Mm-hmm. And he probably would have sold some of those documents to Russia as much as he loved Putin.
Well, my thing is is that what's really disturbing is that because people are doing the investigation, now the FBI is quote unquote under attack, and people are threatening the FBI centers and agents because they did their job.
Well, that happened in 1995 when Oklahoma's bombing took place and they blew up the federal building and killed all those agents. And, then they lied about the Secret Service making phone calls home when January 6th was taking place. That's another pack of lies. The people in the Secret Service, they know that their primary job is to take a bullet for the president. So how is it that some people rioting, they're going to become so frightened as the bodyguards for the vice president that they're going to call home and start crying like they are on 911 on one of those airplanes? I don't believe that. Mm-hmm. And so we've got a lot of lies circulating that are dissipating almost as fast as they put them out. And I'm concerned that black people not get caught up in this and miss the opportunity to do Black Votes Matter, mm-hmm. to register and vote, mm-hmm. so that we make a difference in what happens after November 8th.
Let me ask you a question, just for the record. I want to get back to the Black Votes Matter. The officer, or the man who shot the woman who was coming through the window, was he Secret Service or was he the security staff?
I believe that he was Capitol Police in terms of security staff.
Okay.
And I don't think he was Secret Service because I don't think there would have been any need for Secret Service to be in there since mm-hmm. they were with Pence in terms of the location that he was at.
And, I think I'm a little different. You know what I'm saying? I hear stories about, this person came to somebody's house and held them all at gunpoint and made them sign papers in the music industry. And it's hard for me because, I love the Lord and he heard my cry, but I'm not going to give you a second chance at doing that. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So my thing with Pence is he going to really give Donald Trump, because Donald Trump threw him underneath the bus and really didn't care if he lived or died. He was calling for his hanging.
Well, I think we're trying to watch Pence to see if Pence is going to run. And I think he's waiting to see what happens with Trump. I think that if Pence runs, he's going to run on the whole idea that he was the one that made it possible for the certification to take place. Mm-hmm. But I think that the people who support Trump are so fanatical mm-hmm. that they're not interested in fact. They're not interested in anything other than the game plan that they have.
Yeah.
And so that crazy person who attacked the field office and ended up being killed, or that other man who drove his car into the retaining wall at the Capitol across from the Supreme Court mm-hmm. and got out and shot himself. The crazies are looking for a new rallying point. Mm-hmm. And that's what we have happening with Trump. It's a rallying. It's not even about him anymore. We see that no matter what, if Trump was to die today, they would build a shrine to him and still go on the warpath.
Yeah.
Because that's what they want to do.
And one of the things that we have to do is just really get back to the fact that in this season, we cannot just stand idly by and think that everything is good and that we're going to it's just all by osmosis is going to change out for the better. We're going to have to go back to that tenacity that they had back in the 60s when they were literally marching to vote. losing their lives to vote. And we need to get young people, old, young, in between, that this election, these next election is really going to shape the climate of this country. And the people outside of our country are cheering us on and cheering the Donald Trumps on, because if they can get us into a civil war type environment, they can walk in and just take it over.
Well, they are looking to try and do that. And that's one of the reasons in the past 2 weeks, I have reminded people that on May 17th, 1957, Martin Luther King gave a speech in Washington, D.C., and the title of that speech was Give Us the Ballot.
Yeah.
And he said, if you give us the ballot, then we can elect honest people to the legislature. We can elect judges and put people in position. We can influence what happens in terms of budgets and priorities. And my biggest concern is that some of us have had so much laid back, what appears to have been success, that we no longer care. We're telling ourselves, my vote doesn't matter. And every vote does matter. If you don't believe every vote matters, look at what happened in, I believe it was the state of Virginia some years, just back before the pandemic, where they had a tie come in terms of election. And what did they do to break the tie? They put the results in two film containers and shook them up and put them in a bowl and pick one.
Yeah.
Now, we might not be but, a few million people, and there are some people now that are talking about trying to register 10 million black voters between now and November. I don't believe it's going to happen, because we have picked up voter registration forms at the Voice and Viewpoint. We're pumping it. We put it on the desk. We don't have anybody coming by to grab them. We have people who have moved, and even Sister Maxwell, who co-chairs Black Men and Women United, was reminding people that if you move, your voter registration doesn't follow you. You need to register again. She just registered like 14 people the other day. We can now, people who are ex-felons can register and vote, but we still are not seem to be clicking with how important this is.
Well, let me just ask questions, because I know that there's a paper copy, but can you register online?
Yes, you can go online and register, and the little card that they sent, I got one in the mail yesterday, says that if there's a change or something, you can go online and change your registration. You can make that happen. You can go out to the register of voters. They haven't started issuing ballots yet. That won't come out until next month. But I keep reminding people, look at what happened in the state of Georgia. In the state of Georgia, people got so serious with Black Votes Matter that they were able to elect a Jew and a black man to the U.S. Senate, which gave the balance of power to President Biden, in addition to their being the ones putting him in office.
Exactly.
And so now we see the Republicans from that day forward, they have been doing nothing but scheming and planning every day to see how are we going to neutralize what takes place. Forget the discussions about adding more seats to the Supreme Court. If we can't maintain control of the Senate and the House, Biden can't get anything passed anyhow.
And that is the thing, that this midterm election basically will determine where we move. Because if they are able to change the balance of both the House and the Senate, then he just becomes almost like ineffective. He's fighting an uphill battle, just like Biden or Obama was.
Well, you're 50-50 within the Senate. And so all we need to do is just lose a couple of Democratic votes, and the Republicans take over. We're already losing seats in the House, but we hope that with what's happened in the past 2 weeks, with Biden getting his Inflation Reduction Acts passed, and the new provisions for buying drugs for seniors at a different rate, and the climate change, that all of those things stand to make a major difference. And what's significant is that it was all passed with a Democratic vote of 50, with Vice President Harris being the tie vote breaker, because every Republican in the Senate voted against it. They have voted against everything. They are not trying to make any changes in America. They're just trying to maintain the status quo until they can get control again.
Yeah. And that's the thing, that it's like, it's almost like it doesn't feel like it's important to us. And, and I want to shift this, because I know so much is happening in our communities. And a lot of times we get caught up locally that we don't see national stuff. Our local stuff overshadows what's going on nationally. Just recently in San Diego, we've had a lot of people get shot and killed. And I know that that is a major concern. Can you give any updates on what's happening with that? Because a lot of people are losing their life over the last. I mean, and crazy things. You know, they always think it's in the heart of the community people, but it's been all over the city, including downtown, where it should be quote unquote safer. They say.
Well, the fourth district where they want to make the crime happen is probably the most crime-free area of the city. So that's not a big problem. We do have downtown activity. We do have issues going in other parts. But I'm more. We seem to have that. But as long as we have homicides that include black people, folks seem to be okay with that. I'm just very concerned that we are not looking at this situation from the standpoint of it's if we're gonna have a mass shooting, it's one thing to have a shooter, but we've got to stop killing each other.
Mm-hmm.
That's the big issue right now. Do we stop killing each other?
Mm-hmm.
You know, some years ago there was a lady in the Bay Area who did some posters that she passed out because there was so much black on black in terms of homicides, and she passed out these posters that said, "Congratulations to the black community from the Ku Klux Klan.
Mm-hmm.
We want to thank you for doing a better job than we could ever do, and we want to encourage you to continue killing each other because we can't seem to get around to it."
Exactly.
And so we need to focus on. There are a lot of tensions. There are a lot of people who've been pent up. There's a lot of mental health issues right now going on in our communities. They're not being addressed. We're trying to get the county to address them in terms of the help that people need.
Mm-hmm.
And so we just need to engage and not just look at stuff and walk away saying, like George Foreman, on that commercial, not my problem. It
Mm-hmm.
is our problem. And we
Yeah.
shouldn't wait till it's at our door.
Yeah, and I was asked today, and maybe you can update me. I know that we have uh, cameras that capture people going through lights and everything else. But can you talk to about shots unheard, or the thing that hears the shots and have people respond quicker? Is it even working?
Well, it depends on who you talk to. It's the first shot thing. It's a system that when the shot goes off, that a signal is sent and they show up. And, that can be dangerous too,
Mm-hmm.
because what happens is when people show up, the first thing they do is look for somebody black.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had time after time where we've had in different cities, we've had black undercover officers who responded to officer on duty, call officer in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
They show up to help the officer in trouble, and then when the backup come, they kill that person instead of looking at the other people. They inherently will look at a black person in any kind of confrontation as if we are responsible for the problem before they look at anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like a reflex. And so, again, we have this thing about, they used to talk about driving while black. Well, now it's a question of living while black.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're living while black, then there's this phenomenal opportunity that you're going to be stopped, you're going to be pulled over, you're going to be questioned, you're going to be put through all of these changes that other people are not going through.
So I'm gonna ask the question, and this is a question that can go on forever, but this is the question: if African American and Black people are being treated a certain way, and we're finding out that the Latinos and the Mexican Americans are being treated a certain way, why haven't we at some point officially come together and make a majority party, and then take charge of all the chaos?
You really want my answer to that? Okay.
It has to, because it seems like there's there's more minorities or more people of color in the United States than there are other people, but it seems like that we can't get together with a platform.
Well, let me put it this way. About 60 years ago in San Diego, before we had Leon Williams as our first city council member, we had a coming together of the Latino and African Americans, and they made an agreement at the time. The agreement was that Pete Chacon would go to the assembly, and that Leon would go to the city council and on to the board of supervisors. And so what's happened across this country is, and you look at the Cesar Chavez movement, blacks were involved with that. People like the late Tambuzi was there. People like M. Samaji and folks here who've worked with them. We got involved. But something very interesting happens, that it appears that once there's a certain level of success achieved with some Latino residents, they move away from being Latino and they try to act more white, and they want to be identified more with whites than with blacks. Now, that's very significant because when you look at the census has two categories of Latinos. It has white Latinos, which goes to Latinos who are of Spanish descendants, and then they have non-white Latinos, which goes to Latinos who might say come out of Mexico and be part Indian and part of the Spanish culture. So they're the Chicanos, and then you've got these subgroups in there and the dialects, just like you might have one level of Spanish spoken in Mexico or in Texas, but it's going to be different than what's spoken in Puerto Rico or the Castilian. So you have people all over this country who come here and assimilate. Black people have not been able to assimilate because our color doesn't change. So we have that, but others who look white, Russians, the Jews, Europeans, that they all can fit in and become white. Filipinos on the East Coast, they had a tendency in the early days of in the 60s and 70s when they were trying to marry the brothers to get over here. They didn't mind being black. When you look later on, and there you have them they were marrying the white soldiers and joining the Navy and stuff, and they got over here, all of a sudden they became white. Okay. And so race is the essence of it. And I keep mentioning this because race seems to be the elephant in the room that nobody wants to acknowledge that's present. And race and racism is at the core of all the issues that we have in America. It's race. And it's fear of the white race saying we're about to be extinct, and you have people telling them, well, look at the number of mixed marriages we now have compared to what we had when we first got the Lovings case, and you're going to be neutralized, and we've got all of these people marrying blacks, Mexicans, whites, Asians, and people feel that, okay, the children there's no longer going to be this pure Aryan race. And so this is a part of that mentality. This is a part of the mega mentality that Trump and them are operating on and wanting not to speak about. When they say make America great again, they really mean make America white again. So, and I'm sorry, Brother Thompson, but we want to remind people that they can call in.
Yeah. So I'm just going to ask this a question because I'm a little confused. Because, I know that people who can assimilate many times try to assimilate so that they're not seen or feel like they're discriminated or they have limitations. I also experience that with African American people that come to a certain prestige in life. Many times they forget that, they can still get their ribs down here in the community, but they will go to Point Loma and get ribs because they don't want to drive down to the community because they're at a certain status. So how do we keep people grounded in the fact that no matter how much you assimilate, when the stuff hit the fan, those words will still come out of the people that don't see you as really one of them?
Well, this is why so many people feel that integration was the worst thing that could happen to black people. Because when we were segregated, we all knew who we were and what we were. When we got together, we didn't compare notes about jobs because we knew that we might have been janitors in different businesses, but we were still janitors. Okay, we weren't on the cash registers, and we just celebrated, 50-some years of the Woodworth sit-ins and what it took for us to be able to go. We can't be mad about people wanting what other people had, and so we went through that period. But the key is not to lose who you are in the process, and that seems to be the Anglo mentality is to have people assimilate to the extent that they lose their culture. We saw it happen in Australia. where we got all the Aborigines with blonde hair and stuff. We know how that happened. We now know what happened to the Native Americans in Alaska and the Antarctic area, where children were taken away from their parents, and they were taken from in these schools that were set up as they took them from the to the west and brought them east. They cut their hair, refused to let them speak the language, and that's why we have these race and reconciliation commissions now trying to make up for what was done. The bottom line to what you just said, Dr. Thompson, was probably best vocalized by General Benjamin O. Davis Sr. when he became the first black general in the U.S. Army, and he went out to the first troop to the black troops who were excited to see him as a black general, and he made this statement to them. He said, "I am your color, but not your kind."
Yeah.
And so we have discrimination. We have people who are Africans who have come to this country, acquired citizenship, and don't want to have anything to do with African Americans. And one of my biggest challenges in San Diego has been bringing the African communities who have their own conflicts that they had between the Eritreans and the Ethiopians, and then you had Ghana with their separate groups, and Nigeria and Somalia and the Sudan, and you just had this conflict because of the number who were Muslims in terms of African communities, when the number of American blacks are Christian. So we have all of these built-in conflicts that really prevent us from being the melting pot, because I believe, as and Andrew Young pointed this out when he became ambassador, that many of the black people are brought into this country. They are told when they get here from African countries, do not assimilate or get involved with the American blacks. And they're told all kinds of negative things about us. It used to be a time in D.C., if you were a black person and you wanted to catch a cab and it was an African driving, he wouldn't take you to a black neighborhood. And when I was in D.C. last month, I remember I had to catch a cab to my sister's, which was in Anacostia, and it was an African cab driver. And I found myself asking this driver, I said, "Do you go to Southeast? Will you go to Anacostia?" And he looked at me like strange. He says, "Hey, brother," he said, "I'll go wherever you say because the cash is green." Well, that's an evolution in terms of this. So remember, as long as they could keep us at odds with each other, as long as they could keep poor whites telling them you might be barefoot and ignorant, but you are better than them black folks that live down the road, they could keep the conflict going. And it's up to us to overcome the conflict.
And I think that is the key thing right there, is that we literally have to learn how to overcome the conflict, because people will always keep us at each other, because we literally see it in the church.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? We have, they say that the church on Sunday morning is the most segregated
Still is.
Time in America. And it's really weird, because I always say sometimes we operate like little gangs. Say you got the Baptists against the non-denominationals against the Assemblies of God, and it goes on, but yet we still say we serve the same God.
Well, but it's the white folks, black folks, they do the same thing. Okay, I remember growing up being told this song about a black church on one end of the street and white on the other end, and in the black church they were singing, "They're not a friend like the loving Jesus," the song, and the white folks down the street were singing, "Will there be any stars in my crown?" And both of them got to to that part of the song at the same time, where the white folks were saying, "Will there be any stars in my crown?" And the black folks down the street had hit that point in the song when they say, "No, not one." No,
Yeah.
and so that conflict has always been there. We see more blacks that are in white churches, but many of the blacks who are in white churches now, they're biracial, but then there are many of them in white churches who will not have anything to do with the black church. And part of it is the fault of the black pastors who refuse to educate themselves, to upgrade how they're teaching, to get away from the hooping and hollering and all of the stuff that we have in economic divisions in religion, Brother Thompson. And this is such a very important issue, the economic division. You got the Presbyterians that we call the frozen chosen. Okay, you got the Methodists who are now, we don't talk about it anymore because they consolidated the colored Methodist Church with the Methodist Church. Then you got the Baptists. You got the National Baptist, which is black. You got the Southern Baptist, which just held a meeting because they are dealing with the sexual offenses of the pastors. And then you have the Church of God in Christ, which is the white spinoff from the Azusa Street 1906 movement when, Seymour Williams brought that thing. And so the whites became
Assemblies of
Assemblies
God.
of God, and the blacks became Church of God in Christ.
Because they didn't want to be ordained by the Church of God in Christ.
There you go.
And so you had the Baptists, from the Baptists came the Church of God, from the Church of God came the Church of God in Christ, and then out of the Church of God in Christ, because of the white ministers not wanting to be ordained from black people, became the Assemblies of God.
And then you had the apostolic element come in because you had the argument over how you baptize, okay? Because they believe that you just baptize in the name of Jesus, and our Bible say in Matthew 28 that we should go forth teaching the gospel, baptizing in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. So you get all of these little divisions on top of the race issue. The thing that helped us before integration in 1954 and 1965 Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act is that when people came together, the church was the hub of social activity. And so people understood that. That's why we dressed. That's why we did the things and created the usher boards and the half-hour walk down the aisle and all the things that we did, because we were compensating for what we were socially deprived of.
So let's go back, because I noticed back, in the 60s when the fight started and we were trying to get things moving, we saw a diversity of people. But the one thing that we did see was the consistency of, quote unquote, the African American people. I have basically seen, people literally have said, because, if we wait 30 to 60 days, they'll go on to something else.
Of course, but here's the issue, and I was there in the 60s, I was more than you being older. I was there before they did the March on Washington. I was on Capitol Hill when they were planning the March on Washington. And I can tell you, in the 60s, before 63, in that whole time frame, there were major conflicts in the black community. Was the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. Then there was CORE. And then there was the Muslim element. And then you had the civil rights movement still struggling and fighting because everybody didn't embrace it. So you had all of these people with a sense that something had to take place. You had the Black Panthers going off, and they were doing their piece. And there was no cohesive come together. The one thing that made a difference, and I think with what Dr. King did, because what Dr. King did in the South, he would not have been able to do in the North. And what Malcolm X did in the North, he would not have been able to do in the South. And so God hit both men in the places that they needed to be at the times that they needed to be because of what was happening with the people that were involved. And so it's the times that bring the change. And so we have reached a point where we don't have the major conflicts that united people, because Fanon in The Wretched of the Earth talked about how as long as some people are able to hold their head sideways and the oppressor's foot is on their neck, if they can breathe, they won't move. But if you turn their head so that their nose and mouth is in the ground and you put that foot on the back of the head, now they got to struggle to live or they die. And so we have not reached that point again, but we don't want to go back there because these people are chewing away at the Constitution, nibbling away at our rights. This is a conscious effort by a certain group of people, and now the Supreme Court is housed by them. Even though we just put a black woman there, she's there alone because let her not be confused with Clarence Thomas, because he might look black, but he is no more black than the inside of an Oreo cookie. And so we've got real issues here that we need to wake up and pay attention to.
So we've talked the issue, we discussed the issue. How do we move forward, and what should be our clarion call during this season? Because we have to do something.
Well, Dr. Thompson, it's been said that you can legislate what people do, but you can't legislate what they think. You cannot legislate the heart. And we still in a situation, and you and I know it from Black Men and Women United. We got all of these little cliques here in San Diego who are determined that they're not going to work with those of us who have been holding the banner up for over 2 decades. Everybody is running around like the world started when I got here, and nobody knows what they're doing but me. And so we have all of these people caught up in their own little need to be recognized. And it always reminds me of the old Indian adage that says, "He who leads where no one follows merely goes for a
A
walk."
walk, yeah.
And so there's a whole bunch of people out there walking around, and their arrogance and their pride, their lack of humility, their lack of genuine concern for fellow brothers and sisters, other than when they get in trouble. All of these things they have been programmed to believe because they have drank the Kool-Aid and they bought the lie that they are better and they are different. When the reality of it is, and I know people don't like to hear it said this way, but when you get down to it, you are Dr. N, Mr. N, Sister N, African N, but people see you other than as you see yourself.
Hmm.
And so that's one of our problems here. And until people decide that they care enough about themselves and realize that their future is connected to the future of everyone else, there's very little hope in terms of the masses.
So, um, just real talk. How do we then? Because in growing up in this community, I've seen a lot of changes. Some for the good, for the worse. And I remember sometimes that as a young person, we would say, "Oh, the older generation doesn't understand us." And so that's the reason why they're always trying to slow us down or block us or things of that nature. How do we address that? Because to me, being more older now, um, I never got that. I never understood when people made that statement. Now, granted, there's some people that just don't want you to do better than them, but I always found out if you were truly wanting to be in leadership, you build with the young, the middle, and the older, and you made them all work together.
You can't make them all work together because the attention span is not there. And in the past 40 years almost in this community of trying to bring people together, so many times they're like the soda that fizzles. You put your thumb in it and you shake it,
Hmm.
and it fizzles. You take your thumb out and it settles down. And a lot of people have decided that black people in particular, they just gonna fizzle. It's already been determined that we don't have to stay to it. We can be distracted in terms of getting off point with the issue, and we can be brought back to being more concerned about self. You know, if you just look at as we move around San Diego, if you go down to Sweetwater or to Plaza Boulevard, when you come off the freeway, there's a whole shopping centers there in that area, and they're all Filipino.
Hmm.
There are all kinds of businesses in there, and people are doing things. And you will find that if you go to some of the stores, you're going to find Vietnamese stores. You're going to find their papers. You're going to find their food products. You're going to find the same thing Filipino. You're going to find the Chaldean community has their whole piece. We don't have that. Even the African communities, you move along El Cajon Boulevard, they got their own stores and they got their restaurants. And I have tried many, many times to bring those elements together with us in terms of what's in the interest of us. We were successful some years ago in getting more interpreters
Hmm.
to help in terms of social services, health and social services. But um, people have to see the need, and I just don't see them seeing that need yet to pull together as they need
Okay.
to.
So as we move forward, because what I'm seeing is all over the city, people are starting to talk about creating zones. You have Little Italy, you have the Gaslamp district, you have the Hillcrest district, and now even up here, there's the Asian district that they're building here. How successful do you think that we're going to really be able to build a an African American arts district?
Well, the district is set aside, the money is there, but we have all kinds of competing interests in that area. And so that's going to be an issue. What we need to understand that the zone cannot be a either or. It has to be inclusive of all, so that there is room for every activity that people have or something different they want to do, be it the museum or the shops or what. We just need to have African American business ownership come into that zone. And one of the things I've noted over the past 35 years that I've covered this community as a paper, like the restaurants, we complain that we don't have black restaurants, but when we've had them, the people didn't support them. You can't support a restaurant coming out on Sunday for 2 hours to buy some chicken and greens, and what about the rest of the week? And the places that are now open, and that some that are doing business right now, they have grabbed onto a change in the business model that makes some sense. The days that Bow-Legged Barbecue is open, the days that the Mississippi Bankhead, Mississippi is open, Surf and Turf, and all these different places. They know now that they can't be open from dawn until midnight.
Okay.
Many of them are taking a 6-hour window, and if you want the product, you buy it within that time, and other than that, they're gone. And so things are changing, but yet, if you go downtown, and I think very few black people in this community have done this. If you go to Hillcrest, Golden Hills, Little Italy, you go into these districts at night, on any given night that the weather is warm, and you would think that you were in Soho or you were in the French Quarters or anywhere. And it's not just this city, it's in D.C., it's in every city that the metropolitan area has been reclaimed, like the gas lamp district, by those entities that are progressive and spending money and moving. And so if that's working for people, they're not going to be worried about whether or not you got one or two blacks that have opened businesses downtown. I hope they're successful in terms of what they're doing. But what they did when they went downtown is they didn't try to reach back to bring the community with them. They just went after it from their own standpoint. And so these are things that we have to talk about. I know tonight we went over the board and we talked about a number of things. These are some of the issues that we need to have discussion of, listeners. This is why, well, Black Men and Women United, we open the table each Tuesday morning to have people bring issues up that we can talk about so that we can share with each other and see how we can help each other. And this is a time to say, Dr. Thompson, that if you want to be a part of that dialogue, which is open, all you have to do is be black. You can call the Voice and Viewpoint and leave your email or text it, and you'll be added to the list. But you have to be black to participate in this meeting, as much as that bothers some people, because it's like the kitchen table, it's family. And it's not racist, because there are people from other ethnicity and positions, city leaders and officials who are invited on at particular times to talk to the group. And so this is what we do.
And one of the things about it, I want to address it because, you have the Black Caucus, you have the Latino Caucus. Every elected official has their Black advisory, their Latino advisory, and their business advisory and things of that nature. This is just really an opportunity for African American people to come together in a safe environment and to discuss. And people come to there from elected officials to DAs to everybody because they want to hear that voice. And they want to hear the pureness of the voice, just like people go to other organizations to hear the pureness of that voice. And so this is just another form. And I want to continue to say that because even though we participate in African American, our Black Men and Women United, we participate on other forums that are multicultural. And sometimes we're the only black face in the room, but they want to hear what we have to add to the table. So I want to encourage people that it is about getting involved and getting engaged in your community. If you're a Latino and you see that there's some things that are going on in the community that you should have a voice on, you should get involved in your community to continue to grow and strengthen us as a body. And collectively we will grow because those organizations come together and have massive discussions also.
and we have issues. There will always be new issues. And one of the beauties of what we do collectively is we're not a nonprofit. We don't have bank accounts. But if somebody puts a need or interest on the table, all of us have an opportunity to speak up and say, hey, I support that. And that's how we support each other. That's the way we grab a school and support it, like we did Bell Middle School and put all kind of supplies and resources, or elementary school that needed some calculators or whatever. We look at how we can be of help to one another. Okay, and our motto is that we are about service rather than being served, and that makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right, Dr. Warren. And we try to share with people consistently that we have to literally learn how to support each other and learn how to celebrate each other. And so I send kudos out to all of the organizations that are doing work in their communities. I thank you all for supporting that we can have different dialogues. Now, mind you, even though we play a majority of music on this station and we play a very good eclectic mix, we also like to have great forums just to talk about things that are impacting different communities. And it's not just happening just in San Diego.
That's
It's
true.
happening all in many other communities. And so as you're listening in, it's important that you say, how can I engage in my community? What part can I play and what role can I play to make my community, my city, my state better? And then also, it is a challenge to educate. Because if you don't talk about difficult subjects, be it racism, be it police violence, be it, the whole fentanyl issue, if you never ever truly have a conversation or ask questions, then we are the blind walking the blind.
Amen. You are so right, Dr. Thompson. And we invite feedback, and we invite meaningful feedback. I mean, if you see something that needs to be done, get an idea of how you can contribute to it. Not just call somebody and say what someone else ought to do. The question is, what can you do? What are you doing? And if they come, there's this old session that saying that when they came for everybody, I didn't say anything, and then in the end, when they came for me, there was no one there to speak
Yeah.
because we didn't speak up, and so we keep speaking up and speaking out, and we're excited, we are motivated, we are encouraged in terms of what we're doing, and we hope that we will hear from you. Remember, you can be in touch with us with us here at godradio1.com, or you can be in touch with Voice and Viewpoint, sdvoice.info, and we welcome the input.
Well, with that being said, we want to thank everybody for listening in tonight. We want to appreciate you. We'll be back next week with more hot topics, and we want to encourage you all. Get involved in your community. Vote, vote, vote. Pick up the San Diego Voice and Viewpoint. Download the app, and also listen to GOD Radio 1 for some great gospel music in an eclectic mix that you will enjoy day by day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Right here on GOD Radio 1, we want to thank you from the desk of the editor. Y'all be blessed.